The Wellness Wednesday Show.
With Paul and Emma.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wellness Wednesday Show with me, Emma Goodwin, and...
I missed all of that because you were breaking up really badly. It's the Wellness Wednesday Show, or if you prefer, it's the Wednesday Wellness Show with Paul and Emma. Off to a flyer. Brilliant. Okay. Right. So who's going first? Shall I introduce you, or are you going to introduce me?
I'll introduce you.
Oh, lovely.
I would like to introduce you to Paul from Nutrient Nirvana. He is an amazing musician, and he had a school of rock, a bit like Jack Black on that film of the same name. And in lockdown times, he became Nutrient Nirvana's founder and is distributing wellness products to the world. Amazing gelatin-filled capsules, which I'm really excited about. And he was the creator of Ox Busters, as per Sally Kane Norton's recipe to help us get rid of oxidase. Also known as Esoteric Explorer on YouTube, interesting alternative history channel. Good to see you.
Wonderful. Just one thing, I wasn't really a rock school teacher. I was a classical guitarist and taught classical guitar and a bit of acoustic guitar, and I had a guitar orchestra, but I don't actually play electric guitar. I can play the drums. I can play the drums, but I don't play electric guitar. Not really.
I imagined you like Jack Black, you know, in school.
Everyone says that, and then if people buy supplements off me, I'm like their dealer for some reason. I don't know why that is, but there we go. There we go. Make your own minds up. Anyway, so Emma Goodwin, the lady next to me, is a certified GAPS coach. GAPS stands for Gut and Physiology or Psychology Syndrome. I think I'm right in saying that. And we'll go into GAPS a lot more in a few moments' time. Now, the first time I saw Emma was about 3 years ago now. I watched her on a podcast and was absolutely blown away. I was struck by her contagious enthusiasm, her eloquence, and her ability to get her points across, but most of all, her wisdom. So she's a very inspiring lady. She's worked wonders with her own children to bring them back to health, and she's worked similar wonders with hundreds of her clients. So if you're looking to restore, maintain, or improve your health, I always recommend Emma Goodwin, number one. There you go.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Right, we'll see you next week. Cheers, bye. Okay, so perhaps
I'd like to add to that little intro that I used to be an actress on TV, and I used to play a doctor on a medical drama, pushing pharmaceuticals in the entertainment industry unwittingly.
The irony.
And then I became a decorative artist, and I poisoned myself with solvent-based paints, which was all part of my toxic problem. When my children were born, they weren't very well because I was toxic, you know. And I became a smallholder and regenerative agricultural farmer for 4 years. But I am a Demeter certified horticulturalist. That's a biodynamic grower.
That's really cool. And then you became a GAPS coach.
Yeah, a professional. I've been pro for 5 years now.
Tell us about GAPS, Emma.
Oh, gut and psychology syndrome is a protocol, a nutritional protocol. It's a way of eating that really, it's how we used to eat before there were refrigerators and before the industrial food system came along. It's traditional ways of eating. So yeah, that's basically it. It's how to eat. It's a bit like French cuisine, rich, lush, delicious, gut healing food. So we just avoid all processed foods, all vegetable oils, all sugars. Most sugars. We're off the grains, basically, which some people are like, what? Because that can be difficult because drugs, they're like drugs, grains.
So there's lots of animal foods, there's lots of fermented vegetables, fermented drinks, raw dairy.
In fact, I'm just having a little bit of kvass. which is
Oh,
a
very
good blood
nice.
tonic. It looks like wine, doesn't it? But it's made out of beetroots.
Yes, I don't think I've ever tried that before. Aren't beetroots high in oxalates?
They are. And then
You rebel.
if we consider the fact that most things in the natural world contain all of the bacteria to break them down, so a whale contains all the bacteria needed to break it down when it dies in the sea. We contain all the bacteria needed to break us down when we die, you know. So a beetroot contains whatever it needs to break it down, you know, once it's
Right.
being broken down. So if it contains high oxalates, then maybe it contains oxalate eating bacteria. So when we're fermenting it, maybe we're growing those. I mean, that's a hypothesis.
I've just 1 second. I've left my drink over there. Hold on a sec.
What are you drinking then?
I'm drinking fulvic minerals.
Nice.
Fulvic minerals. So
Cheers, my dear.
yeah,
Cheers.
cheers.
Ding.
Excellent. So yeah, fulvic minerals are absolutely incredible. They're all the trace minerals that used to be in the soil prior to industrialized farming, and there's all sorts of electrolytes and phytonutrients and vitamins and amino acids. It's an incredible drink, and we're the only company in the country that do 2 different formulas now. So
What's the difference between your 2 formulas?
that's a good question. So one is called gut health and one is called cellular detox. So one is particularly good at detoxing you at the cellular level, which is really important because then your cells can take in other nutrients much more efficiently. And the other one is the gut health, which is the original formula, which has been scientifically proven to really help with your gut health, in particular to strengthen the gut lining.
Okay.
So,
and highly recommend fulvic minerals actually because they also bind onto metals, help get metals out of the body. I always think of fulvic minerals as being like the black liquid that would come out the bottom of a compost heap. It doesn't sound very appetizing, does it? But you know, it's
very similar. Yeah, it's very similar. I mean, if you were going for a walk off the beaten track somewhere into an ancient forest or something like that, and you dug down, I don't know, several feet, everything in that forest that has died, all the plant matter, all the insects, everything is going to be in fulvic minerals.
That sounds gross. It's purified and it tastes of nothing. And it's really just to add to your mineral drink, you know, in the mornings, you can just add a few drops to your mineral drink. I highly recommend it.
I had an electrolytes drink today that was sent to me by a company that we buy ingredients off. And it was disgusting. It was horrible. Sorry?
Was it flavoured?
Yeah, it had lime flavour, but it just tasted like medicine. It was horrible. This is much nicer, much better for you. It's got no taste really at all. And
I just squeeze a whole lemon. I just squeeze a whole lemon in a litre bottle and add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of bicarb to buffer the acidity of the citric acid, and a 1/4 teaspoon of potassium bitartrate, which is cream of tartar, which is a cooking ingredient. And that gives a really nice, and sometimes I put a bit of eggshell mineral mix in there for the calcium as well. Wow. That's all your macros, that is.
Yeah, impressive. Wow, okay. Emma, today I really wanted to cover fertility with you because I've noticed that, well, I've noticed for a start that the fertility rates in this country are dropping rapidly at the moment. I looked this up earlier today. Turns out the last figures we have are from 2022, and the fertility rates then were 1.49 children per woman, which is the lowest ever recorded in history, and it's exacerbating. And we need that rate to increase to just over 2 children per woman in order to maintain the status quo. So we're well below that at the moment, and we're dropping as well. So it's a very worrying situation. I mean, I think before we tackle the health side of it, there are other issues such as the cost of housing, the cost of living. All these things now are kind of putting young people off. When I was teaching guitar, I noticed that the parents of my students were mostly in their 40s, and their kids were like 7 or 8 years old. So people are having kids later than they previously have done. So what are your thoughts, Emma?
Well, I looked up a few stats as well, actually, and male sperm counts are down over 50% since the 1950s. It's really, they counted 104 million per milliliter of living sperm in the 50s, and now it's about 49 million. That's 104 million. Now it's 49. It's nearly 60% down sperm counts. And that was from the Smithsonian Magazine, don't know whether I trust them, frankly, the Smithsonians, but that was taken from 2019, when there were 223 papers between 1973 and 2018. They were looking at men from over 53 different countries. It was a really broad worldwide study, actually. And then as for women having babies, in the 1950s, there were about 122 births per thousand. And in 2022, there was 51 births per thousand. So it has really tanked. We're like really...
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure some people think, why would I want to bring a child into the world these days? Because it's scary. It doesn't look very nice from some angles. Do you know what I mean? I can understand.
Yeah, we're getting into very deep territory, because what you just said, I think, pretty much explains why I've never had kids. I woke up when I was about 30, 31, around the time that I may have considered doing it. And at that time, when you first wake up, you're kind of, oh my God, Jesus, there's so many things that are going wrong in the world, etc. I don't digress too much, but I don't really regret it, because I love children. I think they're fantastic, just in small doses.
And
But
when you give them back at the end of the day.
Exactly right, yeah. But it's a serious problem. So what do you think are the main causes? Before we talk about the solutions to this problem, we should just highlight, I think, the main causes.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it is to do with the actual getting pregnant side of things. People are so toxic these days. The toxins have been generationally accumulating since, the 80s or before even, with microdoses of all of these strange chemicals that the body just does not recognize. So the body is every day having to fight to detoxify. So if your bucket is topped up with toxins and then suddenly you get some pollen getting up your nose and it's suddenly giving you hay fever, that means your body has reached its toxic load. And I think that's one of the main reasons why people are having problems with things like PCOS, polycystic ovaries, and thyroid problems, which are hormonal. And the other thing is we've been told not to eat fats. And I just went on to the BDA, the British Dietary Association, I think it's called, and to have a look at pregnancy food suggestions, what they suggest that pregnant women should eat. And they're still warning people off eating saturated fats when mother's milk is made of saturated fats, and your brain is made of saturated fats, and your nervous system is made of saturated fats, and all your hormones are made of saturated fats. So how can your hormones work properly if you haven't been eating animal fats, if you've been having vegetable oils and margarines and other polyunsaturated nonsense? So that's a really big thing. I think people literally don't have the strength. The body does not have the strength to conceive. The body is not going to conceive if it's toxic and hasn't got the building blocks to actually build a baby.
So I completely agree with you there. That's a very, very good point you've raised. What I would like to know is, how did this come about? How did the myth come around that fats are bad for us, saturated fats?
It goes back to the 1950s, that story, There's a chap, this is just one chap, I'm sure there are lots of other influences, but there was one chap called Ansel Keys, who was a bit of Fauci-esque character, I think. And he's the guy who created the K ration, which is the food they gave to the troops in the Second World War. It's named after him because his name was Ansel Keys, the K ration. He did a study on human starvation using conscientious objectors as his guinea pigs.
Wow.
And what he deduced from his experiments is, well, he probably found out that we really, really need fats. And then somehow he managed to wheedle his way into the American Medical Association or the American Heart Association, I forget which one, and got on a think tank and started telling everyone. I mean, I don't know how this came about exactly. There were so-called tests, so-called trials, so-called experiments done, and they somehow came to the conclusion that vegetable oils are better than animal fats, and then pushed it somehow onto the population. So that when the government started getting involved with saying what you should and shouldn't eat, should or shouldn't eat, we needed to all stand up and go, what are you talking about? Well, some people did. Some people never stopped eating butter. Some people carried on eating meat, even though the dietary suggestions are on the BDA, dietary associations, they're warning about high fat, and they're also saying if you eat 70 grams or more of protein a day, then you should try to replace some of that with some lentils and pulses. You can't build a baby out of lentils and pulses, let me tell you that now. And there's a ratio. There's a little kind of algorithm you can do, not an algorithm, what do you call it, like algebra, a little calculation you can do to find out how much protein you need in a day if you're trying to build your body or build a baby or do muscle building or whatever. And you weigh yourself in pounds, and then you times that by 2, and that will give you how many grams of protein you should be having in a day if you want to maintain your muscle, if you're working your body, and if you're building a body, if you're building a baby. So I mean I need about 280 grams of protein a day just to maintain my weight and my height, and I'm old. But imagine if you're building a baby, you maybe need more than that, maybe. Or at least, and also we don't just want to be eating protein on its own, we want to be eating a similar amount of fat, actually, not necessarily by weight, but with every mouthful of little burger or chicken or whatever you're having, you need a little bit of butter with it, or a little bit of other saturated fats.
I can remember still being at school. I think I was about 10, 11 years old, and we were doing home economics. So this would have been about 1985. And we were made to watch a video where we were told how dangerous it is to eat butter and how dangerous it is to eat eggs.
What?
And I mean, I was a 10-year-old kid at the time, so I didn't know any different. But that was very much going on 40 years ago, and it's been going on ever since, this lie. It's absolutely crazy. We were allowed to eat butter at Christmas in my house when I was growing up as a kid. We had butter at Christmas. The rest of the time it was margarine because butter made you fat. That's what we were told. So, yeah. And my diet as a kid was, I mean, my mum did a good job, but I was a very fussy eater, and I ate mostly rubbish when I was a kid, all the way through really until I was about 30. So
I did. I ate Frosties, with pasteurized milk, and just come in from school and open the fridge and have like 4 bowls of cereal or something, because it never satisfies you and you always want more.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So if there are young married people out there, or people that are trying to have a baby, they're in their late 20s, early 30s, whatever, what are we recommending? What are the most important things to eat, to drink, to supplement with, to do?
Well, one of the most important things is to prepare beforehand. Prepare 2 years beforehand and get your body really clean. That means avoiding all toxins. Toxins are perfume, spray, your washing powder, your washing up liquid. What are you putting on your skin? Whatever you're putting on your skin, if you can't eat it, you don't want it on your skin. Shampoos, body lotions, if you can't read the ingredients and pronounce them, don't put it on your skin. Have animal fats on the skin. What you can say?
That's a great point. I've just you brought up shampoo, and I can see that you've got lovely long thick hair. So what do you use as a replacement for shampoo?
Wash it very infrequently, probably about 4 times a year maybe, and I use eggs sometimes, and then I put castor oil and coconut oil in it and brush it a lot. Swim in the sea, and then I don't wash my hair afterwards. just don't do very much with it at all. Actually, mostly I just tie it up in a top knot.
There is some sort of regimen for kind of stopping to use shampoo in your hair and just using water, and it involves apple cider vinegar. So I've been using apple cider vinegar on my hair for a while now, and I'm also going a little bit thin on top.
Rosemary oil is really good for that. Rosemary oil.
That's what I've been doing.
Licorice extract, yeah, and rub it into the scalp and massage the scalp.
So fingers crossed that works a bit for me. So yeah, I'm using 1/4 of a cup of coconut oil, 1/4 of a cup of castor oil, and I think 8 drops of rosemary essential oil, and just massaging it in, leaving it on for about 5 or 6 hours, looking like a bit of a what's it, but who cares? And and we shall see. My hairdresser thinks that I've got some baby hairs coming back at the back, so it might work, it might not, who knows. But
and my dad started to grow back his silver grey hair.
Yes, black. I saw that on Instagram.
I think it was Oyster Max that did it, and maybe the X39, the LifeWave patches thing as well. But I mean, I think it's copper is really king. Copper is key. Yeah, so anyone thinking about getting pregnant, they need to remineralize, they need to get rid of the toxins, they need to replace all the body, if they've been eating junk, and if they've been eating, vegetable oils, so chips and stuff fried in vegetable oils, they need to replace all of those bad trans fatty acids out of their body, because their body would be built of that rubbish. And they need to replace all those fats with lard, tallow, goose fat, butter, ghee. Coconut oil's okay, but why send a boy to do a man's job? Because really it's the animal fats that really get the job done. And become fat adapted. And they also need to start eating offal, which is, because we want to start getting it so that their primary fuel source is actually fats rather than sugars, because then their bodies will really start working properly.
I've heard of offal.
It sounds like awful, doesn't it? Awful.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Liver is king.
Liver is offal.
Offal is
organs,
the internal organs. It's organ meats.
Yeah, sure.
Offal.
Okay.
It's kidneys, heart, liver, pancreas, spleen. What else can you get hold of? Lungs. You can do it. Tripe. You can eat everything. I just did a lovely oxtail, actually. I know that's not offal, but it's really gelatinous and really it makes the most amazing stock. Oh.
I think I've read if you eat liver once a week, it's like taking the world's most expensive multivitamin mineral.
Oh yeah.
So you could save yourself a lot of money. The main problem with organ meats and liver with people today is they just won't go there. Oh, it tastes horrible, and all that.
And I don't like the taste of it either. I just chop it up with a pair of scissors into tiny little pill shape and then have a spoonful raw knock it back with milk kefir.
And you can use balsamic vinegar to disguise the taste as well, to a certain extent.
Okay. I sometimes soak my liver in milk kefir because then it's marinated and sort of pre-digested. It kind of cooks it almost, and then it preserves it as well. So I can actually travel with liver in a little Tupperware, so it's not refrigerated and it doesn't go off because it's sitting in milk kefir.
I used to tell people that I soak my nuts overnight for 12 hours, and that the mixed response, generally speaking. But yeah, I think we used to like and eat a lot of nuts, not so much anymore, because most of them are high in oxalates. We've done oxalates, haven't we? You've mentioned oxalates, I think.
Not today. I haven't mentioned oxalates, but yeah, exactly. It's essential to soak.
Yeah, so
essential to soak. And seeds and grains. If you're going to eat grains, they need to be properly prepared. They need to be grown on soil where it hasn't been desecrated with glyphosate and other chemicals. And then they need to be properly soaked, sprouted, fermented, and then you might be able to enjoy a bit of sourdough. But if you've got any kind of chronic issues, don't bother going near the grains.
I don't know if it's just me, but whenever I walk into a supermarket and walk down the bread aisle, all I can smell now is chemicals. I can't smell bread. I just smell chemicals. So, it's not good for you.
It's not good for me. go down the aisle where all the cereals and things are, and it's just like there's nothing down this aisle that I would ever like to eat anymore. It's unnecessary. Once you get past being a sugar monster and needing the starchy carbs, you just don't need it anymore. And you get to that point by becoming fat adapted, using fat as your primary fuel and having a lot of fermented foods, and it changes your microbiome, and then you just stop craving it. And I have sugar. I have honey. I had some really nice white chocolate with some coconut in it yesterday and slept like a baby on it. It was lovely. I do have sugar, but not the grains.
Can you do organic maple syrup on GAPS? Because I really like maple syrup.
It's not a GAPS food, but yeah, organic maple. Sometimes I use blackstrap molasses, which is full of minerals. Really good as a sweetener, but that's not GAPS. But we just use GAPS to get over the leaky gut and heal and seal the gut. And then when you're better, you start to be able to digest some sugars.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so with fertility, getting back to fertility, is there anything else you can recommend to people if they're trying to have a baby?
I would recommend fulvic minerals to get them off, Paul. And I would recommend iodine. This is before you decide to get pregnant. I would recommend fish oils, essential fatty acids from fish oils. They're called essential because you can't get them from anywhere unless you eat them. There are essential fatty acids and there are essential amino acids, which are proteins, but there are no essential carbohydrates.
Fantastic. Okay, and just going back to what you said a moment ago about breakfast, what I've noticed since I've been talking to a lot of clients, breakfast is the major problem, if you like, because most people, when they get up, they've got maybe half an hour max before they have to leave for work. So it's just so easy to put some bread in the toaster or put some cereal in the bowl and away you go. But we're not recommending these foods at all.
Honey, mummy. Tell them about the honey, mummy. We've been programmed to eat the sugar, and that's what we want when we first wake up in the morning is sugar. But back in the day, my grandma. See, what would happen back in the day is you'd get up and you'd go out to work without eating anything. Actually, you'd get up and you'd go out, do the work, and then come back about 11 and have brunch. And it would be a big brunch. It'd be bacon. It would be like lunch. It'd be like bacon and eggs. Well, grandma always used to serve stuff like deviled kidneys, fried liver and onion with a bit of bacon, a liver pate on a little bit of French toast, poached eggs and kippers, kedgeree with a little bit of, I don't know. Do you know what I do is I would have literally leftovers from last night's dinner, and that sounds not very nice, I know, but it's quick and easy. And you don't eat straight away when I wake up. I drink a mineral drink. I drink a cleanse, because when you've just woken up in the morning, it's the time of the day when your body's trying to get rid of rubbish. You need to have a dump, you need to do a doo-doo, you need to have a pee, you need to get rid of stuff. So eating something, when your body's trying to get rid of stuff isn't a great move. So, but to be mineralized is a good move. And then eat something a bit later on. Maybe make whatever you're going to have for your 11sies or your breakfast the night before, and then just go out the door. And do yoga and breathing before you go out.
I've got into the habit of eating 2 meals a day pretty much now. I don't eat breakfast. I mean, we're all different, but I've kind of found that I can go 4 or 5 hours in the first part of the day without eating, and I'm fine. So I'll have, like, as you say, a brunch lunch type thing, eggs and bacon on my lunch break, and then I'll have a main meal in the evening. And then when it gets very late, I try not to succumb to the temptation of eating a jam donut.
No,
Those jammy bastards. Those jammy bastards. I'm still, I'm not perfect. I still, the odd thing still creeps in. But, I feel relatively healthy. I feel pretty good. I turned 50 the other day. I know it's hard to believe. I turned 50 the other day. I've had Raynaud's syndrome before, which is where the tips of your fingers turn blue, particularly when it's cold outside. But I kind of dealt with that with a combination of magnesium, iodine, and sulfur. So I did quite large amounts of those 3 things for about 6 to 8 weeks. And by the end of it, the whole thing had improved by about 80 to 90%. I still get the odd flare up, but it's very rare these days. Interestingly, though, just on that point, a couple of years ago, I had a conversation with my mum on the phone. It wasn't a great one. We have a bit of an up and down relationship, and we had a bit of an argument. Anyway, got off the phone, put the phone down, and there it was. So I'm thinking, wow, maybe there's some sort of emotional toxicity factor going on with that.
Have you heard about German new medicine?
Yeah, I think I told you about it a year or so ago. Yeah.
You can't, because I wrote about it in my book.
Oh, I'll take that back then. Fair enough.
I heard about
about
Avalana Levermark, who was a woofer who came to stay with me at the Crossing in like 2014.
Right.
Anyway, it is very interesting because traumas and emotional impacts on our being, on our psyche, it's not a physical trauma, it's trauma on your psyche will translate as a sickness, an illness of some description. So interesting.
It is very interesting. I've had some dealings with German new medicine practitioners before, and there is much validity going on with it. However, I would say that they're kind of like that with their philosophy, and they don't really, in my personal experience, consider nutrition to be as important, and I think that's wrong.
Okay.
You know, I think there are many different facets to health, and nutrition is a really big one, but they kind of underplay it. That's from my own experience. But there we go.
I haven't actually ever had a session with anyone or spoke to anyone in detail about it. I just met a lady who does it called Monica, Polish lady.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. Okay, next week, Emma, what would you like to talk about? I would quite like to talk about chronic fatigue, because that's one of the most prevalent ailments that people contact me about at the moment.
Okay.
So I'm just cream crackered. So we could deal with that, couldn't we?
Yeah, let's
next
talk
week.
About chronic fatigue.
Brilliant.
I'll
okay
see you then.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, we'll be back on all these platforms. God knows how many there are. In a week's time, same time. I will see you then. Cheers. Bye.